Two Chinese warships closed in, a carrier to the north, a submarine lurking below, and a destroyer accelerating fast. For nearly 30 tense minutes, U.S. commanders watched as the noose tightened around their ships in the South China Sea. But here's the part Beijing never expected. Within moments, the American fleet flipped the situation, gaining control of the air, sea, and even undersea space, forcing their rivals to pull back. And no missiles were launched, no torpedoes fired. How did this reversal happen? Stay with us, because you've never seen naval dominance demonstrated quite like this. Before we move on, I would like you to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Why would a warship suddenly push its engines from a steady 18 knots to a surging 30? That was the question raised in 2018 when a Chinese destroyer shifted gears and cut across the path of the USS Decatur in the South China Sea. The two vessels came so close that sailors on deck reported seeing the rivets and panel lines of the opposing ship just yards away. In a stretch of water where seconds matter, the Chinese ship veered within 45 yards of the American destroyer, forcing the Decatur to adjust course and speed to avoid a steel-on-steel collision. For those watching radar screens inside the Decatur's operations center, the surge of speed was no accident. It was a message, a show of intent, making clear that the United States would be pressed every time it sailed into those disputed waters. China described that confrontation as a necessary action to defend sovereignty. From Beijing's perspective, the Decatur was inside space they claim as territorial seas, and the blocking maneuver was proof of resolve. The United States rejected that version outright, calling the waters international and the maneuver dangerous. Around the world, analysts pointed out that both ships were heavily armed and moving at nearly highway speeds. A 9,000-ton destroyer, longer than a football field, was swinging across the bow of another ship just to force a rethink of its path. Neither one fired guns or missiles, yet the contest was just as real. The message was clear. One side was trying to intimidate, the other refused to yield. The Decatur incident was not the first, nor would it be the last. Repeated close encounters have become part of what many describe as gray zone tactics. These actions are calculated to rattle opponents without crossing the line into outright combat. The problem is that such steps leave no room for error. Paint a picture of radar alarms blaring, helmsmen trying to steady courses, and crews braced for impact. A tiny mistake in those moments could spark a chain of escalation involving far more firepower than either commander intended. Fast forward to 2025 near Scarborough Shoal, and the risk became even more obvious. During a high-speed pursuit of a small Philippine Coast Guard vessel, a Chinese Navy destroyer collided with a China Coast Guard ship. The impact caved in part of the Coast Guard vessel's bow, embarrassing Beijing because this time the collision came not from a standoff with a rival power, but from its own forces converging on the same target. Just days later, when an American destroyer conducted a freedom of navigation patrol near the shoal, the region had already been shaken by the image of two Chinese vessels crashing while attempting to enforce their claim. So, why do these accelerations and aggressive maneuvers happen? The answer is pressure. The sudden leap from 18 to 30 knots during the Decatur encounter was not random. It was a physical signal intended to drive the U.S. ship off course, a gesture of dominance carried out with sheer momentum. The Scarborough collision showed how dangerous this approach can be when even allied vessels of the same Navy fail to synchronize during high-speed confrontations. And with international trade worth over $3 trillion passing through these sea lanes every year, even a single disrupted choke point could ripple into global shortages, spiking costs, and shipping delays that reach from Asian factories to American storefronts. This is the powder keg reality. China's push to intimidate using close passes and accelerated charges raises the risks of miscalculation. Washington, however, has not mirrored this by racing hull to hull. The American answer doesn't revolve around the closest maneuver. It depends on invisible systems, silent coordination, and advantages that cannot be seen by the naked eye. How do American ships transform an encirclement into control without firing a single shot? That was the puzzle in 2025 when Chinese warships tried to spring a three-direction trap around the USS Nimitz strike group. To the north, the Shandong carrier maneuvered its J-15 fighters into a launch position. Beneath the surface, a Chinese Type 39 submarine crept forward, And on the western flank, a guided missile destroyer pressed closer, testing the group's reaction. On paper, the appearance looked daunting. A supercarrier encircled, a submarine below, and surface forces tightening. Yet within hours, the situation shifted in a way that left Chinese commanders ordering a pullback without a single exchange of weapons. The change did not come from brute force. What tilted the balance was the invisible flow of information shared across the American formation. The strike group operated through Link 16, a secure network that tied aircraft, ships, and even submarines together into a single picture of the battlespace. Commanders no longer waited for radio updates or visual signals. A radar track seen by a cruiser instantly appeared on the display of a Super Hornet in flight. A submarine's sonar contact marked on its screen became visible in real time to the carrier's command tower. Instead of reacting as separate units, the Nimitz group moved as a tightly knit whole, anticipating attacks before they materialized. This integration created a contrast with the Chinese forces. Beijing's ships and aircraft still relied on spotty communication between vessels, limited by radio calls and visual flag signals. Chinese commanders watched what appeared to be openings but could not confirm what lurked just beyond their radar range. That gap widened when American airpower joined the equation. From the Nimitz flight deck, FA-18E Super Hornets launched fully fueled and fully armed thanks to steam catapult systems that hurled them into the air at fighting weight. Across the water, Chinese J-15 fighters lifted off ski jump ramps with reduced payloads, forced to sacrifice weapons and fuel just to get airborne. It meant shorter missions, less firepower, and limited range compared to their American counterparts. The technological edge deepened with electronic warfare. EA-18G Growlers circled high above, firing streams of electronic signals that flooded Chinese radar screens. These jamming pods planted phantom blips that danced across the displays of destroyers and frigates, pulling targeting systems onto false contacts. As the interference thickened, missile crews could not hold a lock long enough to prepare an engagement. The picture grew unreliable, forcing Chinese ships to hesitate rather than launch blind salvos into a crowded sea lane. Below the surface, the contrast proved even starker. A Virginia-class submarine trailed the Shandong for over a week without detection. Its acoustic signature blended into the background noise of the ocean, leaving Chinese operators unaware they had a predator just miles from their largest ship. Meanwhile, the Type 39 submarine sent against the American fleet produced cavitation sounds that U.S. sonar specialists tracked with ease. The hunter became the hunted, its position compromised before it could threaten the strike group. Control in the South China Sea is not decided by who sails closest, but by who dominates air, surface, and subsurface at the same time. The 2025 confrontation showed that American forces can quietly knit every domain together, leaving rivals guessing while never firing a shot. Deterrence here works long before combat begins, shaping choices without open conflict. Now I want to hear your view. Do you think China could last even 48 hours against a fully integrated U.S. strike group? Comment your thoughts below, because freedom of navigation exists today only through these invisible victories carried out at sea.